As the sun rose on 1914, the world braced itself for a conflict of unparalleled ferocity, World War I. The first spark ignited with the assassination of Archduke Franz Ferdinand of Austria. A complex web of alliances between great powers quickly transformed a regional conflict into a global war. The Central Powers, primarily Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Ottoman Empire, faced off against the Allies led by France, Russia, and the United Kingdom. As the world watched in apprehension, nations picked sides, and the stage was set for a clash that would redefine the world. The Great War was a showcase of technological innovation, but not in a way one might hope. The introduction of machine guns, tanks, and chemical weapons transformed the battlefield into a landscape of horror. Soldiers found themselves mired in the muddy trenches, the only shelter from the relentless hail of bullets and artillery shells. Warfare was no longer about valiant charges and heroic duels. It was about survival in the face of mechanized death. And the human toll was staggering. The war claimed the lives of over 9 million combatants and 7 million civilians. Millions more were left wounded or missing. The sight of young men returning home maimed and scarred became a common spectacle. The psychological trauma, known as shell shock back then, affected countless soldiers, a grim testament to the horrors they had witnessed. The war also led to the collapse of 4 empires: the German, Russian, Ottoman, and Austro-Hungarian. New nations emerged from the ashes, their borders drawn with little regard for ethnic or cultural realities. This would sow the seeds of further conflicts in the years to come. The Great War left a world in ruins, setting the stage for a period of rebuilding and reflection. The cost of victory was high, and the peace that followed was uneasy, for the world had glimpsed the true face of modern warfare. It was a face that humanity would rather forget, yet it was one that would return, more horrific than before, in the not-too-distant future. In the aftermath of World War I, the world sought to heal its wounds and forge a path forward. A pivotal part of this process was the Treaty of Versailles. Crafted by victorious powers, it aimed to ensure peace by placing punitive measures upon defeated Germany, a decision that would have far-reaching implications. Meanwhile, an international cooperative body, the League of Nations, was established. Its mission was to promote peace and prevent future wars. Despite its noble intent, the League was hampered by the absence of major powers like the United States and its inability to enforce its decisions. Beyond the political sphere, societies worldwide were transformed. Women, having played crucial roles during the war, demanded greater rights. Art and literature reflected disillusionment and questioned traditional values. Technology, driven by wartime innovation, began to reshape everyday life. Yet beneath this apparent calm, the seeds of another global conflict were being sown. As the world grappled with economic and social upheaval, a new threat loomed on the horizon. The rise of totalitarian regimes driven by charismatic and ruthless leaders began to cast a dark shadow over the globe. In Germany, Adolf Hitler, with his fiery speeches and promise of a revitalized nation, seized power, instigating a reign of terror that would leave millions in its wake. Over in Italy, Benito Mussolini used his black shirt paramilitary to suppress opposition and establish a fascist state, promising to restore the country to its former Roman glory. Meanwhile, in Japan, Emperor Hirohito presided over a militaristic expansion that would plunge Asia into conflict. These leaders, fueled by a dangerous mix of nationalism and ideological fervor, systematically dismantled democratic institutions and suppressed individual freedoms, paving the way for war. The stage was set for a conflict that would dwarf even the Great War in its scale and devastation. In 1939, the world was once again plunged into the throes of war. The spark ignited by Germany's invasion of Poland set ablaze a conflict that would stretch across the globe. This was World War II, a cataclysmic confrontation that would dwarf its predecessor in intensity and impact. In the early stages, the world witnessed the devastating power of the Blitzkrieg, a German military strategy designed for swift, concentrated attacks intended to disorient and crush the enemy. Western Europe fell like a house of cards. France capitulated, leaving Britain to stand alone against the Axis powers. Meanwhile, on the other side of the world, the Pacific theater was opening. Japan, having already initiated a war of expansion in China, turned its sights on the European colonies and American bases scattered across the Pacific. The surprise attack on Pearl Harbor in December of 1941 brought the United States into the war, marking the beginning of a long and brutal campaign across the vast Pacific Ocean. As the war raged on, the human cost skyrocketed. Civilians were no longer mere bystanders in this global conflict. Cities were bombed relentlessly, families torn apart, and lives irrevocably changed. The world was introduced to a new kind of warfare, one that did not distinguish between soldier and civilian, adult and child. In the end, the tide of war turned. The Allied powers, through a combination of industrial might, scientific innovation, and sheer determination, pushed back against the Axis. D-Day marked the beginning of the end in Europe, while in the Pacific, the battles of Iwo Jima and Okinawa paved the way for the final assault on Japan. Yet, even as the guns fell silent, the world was left to grapple with the aftermath. Cities lay in ruins, entire countries were on the brink of collapse, and millions of people were either dead or displaced. The world had never seen such destruction nor such horrors. But amidst the wreckage there was also an opportunity, a chance to rebuild, to learn from the past, and to strive for a better, more peaceful future. Amidst the carnage of World War II, humanity witnessed the depths of its own cruelty. The Holocaust, orchestrated by Nazi Germany, saw the systematic genocide of 6 million Jews, an atrocity unparalleled in human history. Meanwhile, the atomic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki introduced the world to the terrifying power of nuclear weapons, igniting a debate about their ethical use that continues to this day. In the face of such atrocities, the world was forced to take a hard look at itself. As the dust settled on World War II, the world faced the monumental task of rebuilding. From the ashes arose the United Nations, a beacon of hope for collective security and peace. Meanwhile, the Nuremberg trials sought justice for wartime atrocities, igniting a global conversation on human rights. Simultaneously, the Marshall Plan spurred economic recovery, strengthening ties across nations. The world had learned hard lessons, but would they be enough to prevent future global conflicts?